Cuba is in crisis. The lights are out, the streets are dark. For days, much of the island has been plunged into darkness. This is not a temporary inconvenience. It's a full-blown blackout, the worst in recent memory. Millions are without power, hospitals are struggling, food is spoiling, the people are hurting. This is a story about a nation in the dark, grappling with a crisis that lays bare its vulnerabilities. Imagine your life without electricity. Picture the darkness enveloping your home, the eerie silence broken only by the hum of a few generators. The absence of light is just the beginning. No lights, no refrigeration, no internet. The conveniences we take for granted vanish in an instant. Food spoils, communication halts, and the world outside becomes a shadowy unknown. This is the reality for millions of Cubans right now. Families huddle together in the dark, relying on the dim glow of their phones to navigate their homes. The streets, once bustling with activity, are now ghostly and silent. The blackouts have brought daily life to a standstill. Shops are closed, and the usual vibrancy of Cuban streets has been replaced by an unsettling stillness. The economy grinds to a halt as businesses shutter their doors. Hospitals are forced to postpone surgeries. Essential medical equipment fails. Doctors and nurses struggle to provide care with only flashlights to guide them. The health of countless individuals hangs in the balance. Families are cooking on makeshift stoves in the streets, watching helplessly as their food spoils in powerless refrigerators. Schools are closed, leaving children without education. Businesses are shuttered, leading to financial despair for many. The rhythm of life has been disrupted, replaced by a symphony of generators and the sounds of frustration. The constant drone of machinery fills the air, a stark reminder of the ongoing crisis. The blackouts have exposed the fragility of Cuba's infrastructure and the precariousness of daily life on the island. Aging power grids and inadequate maintenance have left the nation vulnerable to these widespread outages. Every hour without power deepens the crisis and intensifies the hardship. Families sit in the dark, waiting for the lights to come back on, hoping for a return to normalcy. The uncertainty of when the next blackout will strike looms over them, a constant source of anxiety and fear. Why is Cuba in the dark? The answer lies in its aging and neglected power grid. Decades of underinvestment and a lack of modernization have left Cuba's energy infrastructure vulnerable and prone to failure. Power plants are outdated. Transmission lines are dilapidated. The system is fragile, operating on borrowed time. The recent blackouts were triggered by a tropical storm, but the storm simply exposed the systemic weaknesses that have been festering for years. Cuba's energy grid is a ticking time bomb, and the recent blackouts are a stark warning of what happens when neglect becomes the norm. The Cuban people are no strangers to hardship. They have endured decades of economic struggle and political repression, but the current blackouts have pushed their patience to the limit. Frustration has boiled over into anger. Protests have erupted in the streets, fueled by desperation and a growing sense of betrayal. The government has responded with a mix of apologies and accusations. They blame the U.S. embargo for hindering their ability to import essential equipment and fuel. They promise swift action to restore power and address the underlying issues. But for many Cubans, these words ring hollow. They have heard it all before. Section 5. The Embargo's Grip, U.S. Sanctions, and Cuba's Energy Struggle. The U.S. embargo against Cuba has been in place for over 6 decades. This long-standing policy has its roots deeply embedded in the Cold War era, a time when the world was divided into 2 ideological camps. It is a policy rooted in Cold War tensions and designed to isolate and weaken the Cuban government. The embargo was intended to pressure Cuba into adopting democratic reforms and moving away from its socialist governance. The embargo restricts trade and investment, making it difficult for Cuba to access international markets and acquire essential goods. This has led to significant shortages of food, medicine, and other critical supplies, affecting the daily lives of ordinary Cubans. There is no doubt that the embargo has hampered Cuba's economic development and contributed to its energy woes. The island nation struggles with outdated infrastructure and a lack of modern technology, which are essential for efficient energy production and distribution. It has made it harder for Cuba to import modern equipment, spare parts, and the fuel needed to keep the lights on. The energy sector in particular has suffered, with frequent blackouts and power shortages becoming a common occurrence. The embargo is a convenient scapegoat for the Cuban government, but it is not the only factor at play. Internal inefficiencies, bureaucratic hurdles, and economic mismanagement have also played significant roles in the country's ongoing struggles. While the embargo has undeniably exacerbated these issues, it is important to recognize the multifaceted nature of Cuba's challenges. Despite these hardships, the Cuban people have shown remarkable resilience and ingenuity. Communities have come together to find creative solutions to their energy problems, from using alternative energy sources to implementing energy-saving measures. This spirit of perseverance is a testament to their strength and determination in the face of adversity. International aid and collaborations with other countries have also provided some relief. Efforts to develop renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind power, are slowly gaining traction, offering a glimmer of hope for a more sustainable energy future for Cuba. While the road ahead is fraught with challenges, the resilience and resourcefulness of the Cuban people, combined with international support, may eventually lead to a brighter and more stable energy future for the island nation. Section 6. A Helping Hand, Mexico's Lifeline to Cuba. As Cuba struggles to restore power, a lifeline has arrived from its neighbor to the west. Mexico, a long-standing ally of Cuba, has stepped up with a much-needed gesture of solidarity. The Mexican government has pledged to send fuel shipments, technical experts, and essential equipment to aid in Cuba's recovery efforts. This act of support is a testament to the enduring ties between the two nations, and a reminder that Cuba is not alone in its time of need. Mexico's assistance will provide some much-needed relief, but it is a temporary solution to a deep-rooted problem. Section 7. A History of Blackouts, Cuba's Recurring Energy Crisis. The current blackouts are not an isolated incident. They are the latest chapter in a recurring story of energy crises that have plagued Cuba for decades. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, Cuba has struggled to meet its energy needs. The loss of Soviet subsidies, coupled with the ongoing U.S. embargo, plunged Cuba into an economic crisis known as the Special Period. Blackouts became a regular occurrence, a stark symbol of the island's economic woes and its dependence on external forces. Section 8. A Brighter Future, Renewable Energy and Cuba's Uncertain Path. As Cuba grapples with its current energy crisis, there is a growing recognition that the status quo is unsustainable. The frequent blackouts and power outages have become a part of daily life for many Cubans, highlighting the urgent need for a more reliable and sustainable energy solution. The island cannot continue to rely on its aging and inefficient power grid, nor can it afford to be at the mercy of volatile global energy markets. The existing infrastructure is not only outdated but also increasingly prone to failures, causing widespread disruptions and economic losses. The Cuban government has announced ambitious plans to transition to renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind power. These initiatives are part of a broader strategy to reduce the country's dependence on imported fossil fuels and to harness the abundant natural resources available on the island. These plans hold the promise of a cleaner, more sustainable future for Cuba, but they face significant challenges. Investment capital is scarce, and the country's economic situation makes it difficult to attract the necessary funding for large-scale renewable energy projects. Additionally, the technical expertise required to implement and maintain these systems is still developing. The embargo continues to hinder progress. The restrictions imposed by the embargo limit Cuba's access to the international financial markets and advanced technologies, making it even more challenging to modernize its energy infrastructure. And the transition to renewable energy will require a fundamental shift in Cuba's energy policy and infrastructure. This shift involves not only the physical construction of new energy facilities, but also the development of new regulatory frameworks and policies to support the growth of the renewable energy sector. It will require collaboration between government agencies, private sector investors, and international partners to create a sustainable and resilient energy system for the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more trending news.